G'day mate, welcome back to Dyson Sphere with me, Jetty, and of course the wonderful Mr. Icarus. And we're back here on the home system, from many episodes ago. The home system, because this is where all it started, because we've really got to the end of this series. At the moment we're doing an astronomical 60 science per second. We're also launching off, no, not that category. That category. We're also launching off 600 rockets per minute because I went back to a different system and started firing off rockets again. We're producing a crap ton of antimatter with a metric ton of critical photons, with a whole pile of antimatter fuel rods, some space warpers to boot. Like that is a belt of space warpers every minute. Every second. We're using 30 space warpers per second in this particular playthrough. It's been a little bit crazy, and we've definitely got to the end of this series. So what I want to do is I want to do a little bit of a tour of some of my favorite planets. We probably won't get to cover all of them, but over this episode and the next episode, we're going to do a wander around the galaxy. So we're going to start here on our home system. On our home system, this is pretty much where we started really automating things, getting production up and running. Funnily enough, there is still some stone here on my home planet that I cannot mine out, even if I tried to. The oil is completely decimated at just 2.04 per second. Every single crude oil seep is down to, well, crap speed. And funnily enough, it doesn't seem that research really affects this, which is a little bit of a pain, to be honest. Because our research is, well, 470% mining speed per second. At the moment we're doing 132,000 science research, and we have 15 minutes left to do 40% of this science. So what's that? 50,000 science? Let's go with 50,000 science. Yeah, that's 15 minutes worth. So, on our home planet, we had lots of wonderful things. The first thing I want to talk about is our hub, okay? Our main construction hub. Now, I have published a blueprint of this very early blueprint when blueprints were first released, because I did say, right when I started building this, I was going to publish a blueprint. Now, since then, well, when I first published it, the blueprint system was very broken, okay? Space warpers, the belts assigned for space warpers, this little belt here, did not work, okay? Did not work at all. So things were definitely broken. On top of that, as you can see, I have the towers on the outside of the build. The build has been changed. The build has been refined. It has been updated. We shall be covering that in a next episode, probably next episode, because I have a more refined version. There's still some things about it I'm not happy with, and consequently, it's something that you need to get, all the research done. Where are we? Blueprinting, you need to get all the way up to mass construction. Level 5 to use this blueprint. Which means it's a little bit later in the game than I'd like. I really do want to update it and get a version that works earlier in the game. But it's very difficult with the current blueprint implementation for me to do that. So, yes, but yes, this was our main production hub. This produced all our early game items, and then we just added to it as the game progressed, going from, Mark 1 assembler, belt, and sorter, into the Mark 2s, into the Mark 3s, added in all our ships on here, along with, other basics like all our oil refining, and all that sort of stuff, along with many logistic stations. On top of that, this as being our starting system, did start off with our blue science, our red science. Where's red science gone? Red science over here, which we used all the oil on the planet to make a lot of red science. On top of that, no, technically you don't ship in a galactically. Okay. On top of that, there was obviously a yellow science build that we had to put together, along with a green science build that's over here. That was actually the first spot where I sort of started going into really the black box build system, where in this particular case, it's bringing in just plates of basic things. Basic one-step refined. So we're not bringing in raw ore, we're bringing pre-smelted ore, and then running down a whole closed production line. So everything in this build stays inside this build, comes out to the end, and produces all our green science, along with a metric crap ton of warpers, because well, let's face it, warpers are going to be very, very important. The only thing that I managed to screw up with this system is it wasn't making enough graviton lenses, which has been improved, I think. Well, maybe not for our green science. So yes, this was the start of really the black box build system that we've used throughout the whole game, and I have published blueprints now for, well, just about everything you could think of now. In fact, everything you can think of. There is a blueprint for everything now in the game. Everything from your basic sciences to your basic builds, power hubs of different levels for different stages of the game, smelters, many smelters. The only thing I really haven't got around to doing is probably some early game builds, which I was hoping to do, but I just haven't had the chance, the time, and if I'm going to make blueprints, I want to make sure they work in early game, which means I want to test them in early game. So that continues on our story that we're going to get to back into a second. So this also continued with our black box build system. So up here on the blue section of the planet, we have a whole bunch of black box builds. Now these are slightly different. They're not self-contained. In the case of this one, like, we're making magnetic coils and we're making gears, and we're locally supplying them to other places on the planet that might need them. In the case of, what's this? This is motors. We are importing, obviously, the magnetic coils. Same with the green engines. They're going in this tower. They're passing straight through that tower and going out to other builds, but, you know, they are available in theory. We also, back here on this system, we started burning a significant amount of hydrogen. Keep lights on. Power load has thankfully gone down to just 50% because we're now sourcing a lot of materials that this planet was doing in the past from other planets that we've set up since. On top of that, on this light blue build section is where we built, well, rockets. A lot of rockets. A significant build to... hang on. Light blue... oh no, light blue is quantum chips. These, I don't know, mid-shade blue. Mid-shade blue is also producing small carrier rockets, which we were boxing up to, well, put into this tower to then be able to ship them out to other planets to start making Dyson Spheres. We also fit in, if I find the oil build, the oil build to rival all oil builds. This is what really processed most of the oil on this planet, which brings in a full belt in theory, if a full belt of oil actually exists anymore on this planet, and processes the whole thing into both your refined oil along with your hydrogen, takes the refined oil and boxes it up for now and turns it to plastic, because that plastic is the only thing that refined oil goes into now. Everything else that used to use refined oil, like sulfuric acid and graphene, which uses sulfuric acid to make graphene, that's really about it that oil actually goes into. Organic crystals. So organic crystals, we're now mining. Graphene, we've just moved completely across to the fire ice recipe. Sulfuric acid, obviously, we're now mining it directly out of the ground with a water pump. Yeah, it's called a water pump. Don't argue with me about these things. Where is the water pump? Aha! Water pump. Water pump, which we're pulling sulfuric acid out of the ground with. Yes. So oil is basically now only used for plastic, which we're putting into that tower and making it available in the rest of the network. The hydrogen, we're coming over here and we're just burning it off. Literally, well, not really burning it off. We're converting it into a lot of deuterium, like a lot of deuterium. Pumping into this tower to make deuterium fuel rods, because deuterium fuel rods are awesome. And putting a little bit of extra... well, there's no extra. It turns out we're just getting rid of all of it. I should probably take an extra belt and shove it directly in that tower, because the deuterium has another use, which is our backup build. So, early game, I made sure that I had a backup build of warpers, okay? Because if you ever run out of warpers for any reason, bad things happen. So we have a small build here making, what are they called? Strange matter. And then a very small build here making lenses, which first get turned to warpers, which get put into this tower, which is not available in the network. Nobody can take these warpers out of here. This is my 10,000 backup system in case poopies hit fans. Yes. Lastly, on our home planet, we had our science build, our North Power science build, which, again, this blueprint is available with my hub that we're going to cover probably in more depth in the next episode. But yes, this small build up here produces all the things that we're not making already in the hub, like, you know, miniature particle colliders. Let's just land. Ray receivers, EM rail ejectors, obviously not enough silos. We're out of frame material. Okay. Miniature suns, solar panels, because I never built solar panels as part of my original, like, my original hub build. I just don't see the point of solar panels. They are, unfortunately, not terribly good. Honestly, they're not terribly good. They cost a lot of materials, and they only work during the day cycle. They don't work at night, obviously, whereas I prefer the wind turbines. One, because you can drag them around like power poles. Two, they work day and night. It's just constant power. You don't have to worry about it, so I'm really a fan of wind turbines over solar panels. I know some people don't like the look of them, but look, if you're using them as power poles, they look about the same as a power pole does. We're also making miniature fusion power plants. And a second source of fractionators, along with water pumps, because I never bothered making water pumps automatically. I just handcrafted, because if you handcraft 50, you're probably good until you get into mass production, along with the plane smelters, which again, it's missing those things, isn't it? Yeah, frame materials. And of course, labs. Now, you might say fractionators and labs, that seems a little bit of overkill. It is, but it came back to my original hub. There are certain things that I just couldn't get out of the hub easily because I wanted to limit the amount of towers I have. And as you can see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 feeding towers, along with 1, 2, 3, 4 feeding towers at the other side. Oh, 5 feeding towers. I forgot about this guy. Well, some are feeding towers, some are export towers. And yes, if I want to grab fractionators, along with labs, along with pumps, which I'd have to work out where I could automate them, and solar panels, it'd be adding yet another tower, because it'd be another 5 exports I'd need, which would make life difficult. At the same time, I don't actually export the satellite substations because, again, just a complete lack of space. Oh, and technically I don't do the accumulators as well. There's a couple of things this system doesn't do, but I found for my particular playstyle, it does good enough. And honestly, if you wanted to add those extra items in, you could just drag a belt off what's already here and shove it into a tower and have those items available. But this was our home planet. This is our home planet. It's where everything started. From here, I want to stay inside our home system and go visit our next one, which is probably going to be icy smelting, because it has a small air traffic control issue. Yes. Okay, so the first thing you might notice about icy smelting before we even land is it's fairly full planet. It also has a significant amount of traffic. That is both upper atmosphere traffic with both the logistics vessels, along with a significant amount of traffic via the drones. I think we'll start at the hopefully North Pole. Yep. So on the North Pole we have power generation. Obviously, because we're now in the late game, we're using a whole bunch of mini suns. The mini suns just provide a ridiculous amount of power, and it's still not enough. Really? Well, if you actually lined up, do I have more on me? I do have more on me. Do I really want to build more? Not really. Just want the power network to go blue. Make me happy. Oh my god, it's barely moved the bar. Wind turbine, go away. Hey, now the power network goes blue. You just disconnect everything else from it. Oh, that actually works as a drag. Oh my gosh, that makes life so much easier. I thought they'd be too far away from one another. Cool. Alright, power problem fixed. Yes, this this planet, you know, consumes a ridiculous amount of power at, you know, 12 gigawatts, 13 gigawatts. It is also has a significant amount of smelting power on it. In saying that, we haven't quite covered the planet. Like, we've only covered two-thirds of the planet also. Actually, there's a whole ring we could be doing around the South Pole, which also has more suns and more importing. So let's cover this very, very quickly. A couple of things you may notice. We have many smelters. Okay, this is feeding not quite all the smelting for the world. It probably could do all the smelting for the world. Definitely if we upgraded smelters to Mark II, but it's not currently. On top of that, this is a very important planet that makes just a tiny bit of foundation. Over here we have our one tower that's importing all our raw materials to make a full belt of foundation per second. It's actually been turned off because I was hoping to empty it out and move it higher up on the planet because it was a significant amount of foundation. I really didn't want to just delete it all. Realistically, I probably should just delete it all because we're sort of at the insane point where throwing out, you know, there you go, 70 miniature particle colliders. Just drop them on the floor and click that button. It really doesn't matter anymore. So yes, this is making a whole lot of foundation, which gets pumped into a bunch of storage containers for just in case, then into the first tower, then into flowing through the first tower into a second, into a third, into a fourth, and into a fifth. So I have 50,000 accessible if I get to a planet and I want to start foundationing seriously. It can't produce it fast enough, but having a large buffer means that, you know, I can request it out in a significant hurry. On top of that, you might notice there's a couple of towers put up here that probably are at the point they need to be removed. These are like bonus towers. Every tower is already bringing in its own raw ore to then make the plated or the smelted version of that ore. So in case of this one, we're bringing copper ore to make copper ingots. But on top of that, just for throughput issues to help them out, we're actually bringing in all the raw ores again via these particular ships and then using the drones to fly them out. So as you can see, these couple of towers have a significant amount of drone traffic, just flying raw materials around the planet. Again, these are set to 20%. We've probably mined out everything on the planet, haven't we? No, we've still got 13,000 stones somewhere. Not sure where. Oh, it's going to be... No, that's mined out. Ha! Right here. Yeah, we still have a tiny bit of stone that we haven't managed to mine out entirely. But the rest of the planet has been mined out completely. Where is that stone? That's vein utilization 38. Okay, let's try... That's 136,000. That's 128,000. Let's do another 128,000 research. 35 minutes. This is the ridiculousness of this base at this stage. So yes, we have significant amount of smelting on our lovely icy smelting planet. We also have a, like I said, a significant problem with air traffic control. No. Okay, so that one's finally finished. This is one of the places we're mining out stone. There must be another one. There we go. One stone vein. Which you are covering, and you are doing 144 per second. Obviously, in an effort to mine this out. Yeah, it's not going to happen. We should have another one. But because of our, again, our insane mining productivity of 10%. So this 13,000 ore patch actually represents 130,000 ore because of our insane mining productivity. In fact, even if I cover this by 3 miners, which like are working, we can definitely see stoners coming out. Helps if I add power. We can see that this number here is not exactly moving down at the same speed at which this is filling up. Yeah, it's sort of to the ridiculous stage because of how many researchers. Anyway, so this is icy smelting. As you can see, it has a significant amount of smelting on it. Across the top of the planet, we have all single smelted items. So that is iron, copper, and bricks. They all require one material in for one material out. Through the middle section of the planet, we have some of the more complex builds. So we have titanium, which is 2 in for 1 out. High purity silicon, 2 in for 1 out. We also have glass, which is 2 in for 1 out, and energetic graphite, which is 2 in for 1 out. Along here somewhere, did I already fly past it? Yes. Along here we also have our very, very complex builds like the titanium alloy, and somewhere on this planet, I'm not even sure where at this stage, we also have a steel build, which, yeah, we've used one of these builds up here to make steel. So yes, we have titanium alloy. We also, along the middle of the planet, in this gap between the north and the southern hemisphere, where, well, we have more smelters, we're making magnets, because why not? In fact, yeah, we're short on actually importing ore. Yeah. Like I said, this planet has significant air traffic issues. So again, along here we have more smelting and more smelting and more smelting, with another couple of magnet builds across the top of the planet, which, you know, there are available magnets, so it's not really an issue. And then we have at the other pole, which I'm assuming is, oh no, this is the North Pole. Wow, we start the other end at the South Pole. We have another ring of towers that, even though they have a 300 megawatt charge, can't quite keep up with sending out ships non-stop to go bring in ore, and also having drones flying around at all times, well, taking that ore to the many smelters around the planet. So again, this is IC smelting. This is again in our home system. As you can see, it has a small traffic control problem. Next planet we're going to look at is Westernhusen, again inside our home planet. It's doing two things. It's keeping the lovely atom pattern we have around our sun up and running by just keep firing off some sails every now and then. It's fine. You might say it's wasting resources because it's not in a sphere structure, but honestly, really don't care. At the same time, we also used Westernhusen to build the sub to GD giant galactic advertising banner, because, well, let's face it, when you're going to make an intergalactic empire making power, you might as well have a banner to go with it. So if you haven't already clicked sub button, you probably should do that right about now as we head over to Westernhusen, which originally just started out as a mining planet. We were just literally coming out here and grabbing raw resources. Unfortunately, through to overzealous mining of our home system, there's not a lot left. We've completely decimated the silicon. The copper we're still chewing through. The iron's just gone. Titanium, it turns out you don't use a lot of titanium. Not nearly as much as I thought you did. Stone, we've burnt through a lot of stone, mainly in firing off those solar cells that are absolutely useless. And coal is one of those resources that most of it appears on your home planet, and even then, you'll never fully get rid of it. So, again, this is just basically a home, a mining planet, which even with our insane productivity and everything else, like, you know, this miner is doing... Hang on, let's try that miner. 720 ore per second. It's actually not quite fully filling the belt by itself, but almost. Because of the amount of research we've done, I really need to... Every planet I've visited and already outposted to, I really need to come along and start splitting the miners onto separate belts, because... Is that going down at all? Oh, that's finally going down. Yeah, 2 miners fill a belt. This has 3 miners. I don't think it will ever empty. Oh, this guy's doing 1150 per minute. You gotta remember, a belt does 1800. So this guy's also trying to do 1150 per minute. Yeah. This guy doesn't even have a hope. He hasn't even started. Oh, and we have power problems. Awesome. Why does it not surprise me that with our insane productivity and everything else that we start having more and more power problems? So, yes, Westernhusen. Westernhusen started off as a fairly boring planet. Didn't do a lot, was just really a mining outpost. But then, over time, did evolve to do a couple of things. One, we put a ring around the planet doing solar cells launching with EM rail ejectors. Why? because I want to keep it running 24/7. So the best way to do that is not put them at the poles, because the poles sometimes come in and out of range. Just wrap right around the equator. If it's around the equator, it's always got some part of the planet firing at all times. On top of that, it became a spot where we could dump excess hydrogen, because we started making over here. We started bringing in our critical photons that we were making on this planet. So we started grabbing some critical photons from ray receivers. Speaking of that, do I have any of those on me? No, because that would fix my power problem. Probably wouldn't actually. We're pulling more than what the sphere can produce. It's fine. It's fine. So we started bringing in. Started making critical photons here on this planet rather than trying to squeeze it in on the home planet, and started taking those critical photons and splitting them into their two raw ingredients, being antimatter and hydrogen, and then converting that into a whole bunch of antimatter fuel rods. In fact, this little build here, which only produces like, I think it's like 3 or 4 antimatter fuel rods per second. Actually, we could probably look this up. On local planet. It's making 293, which is what? 5 per second, I think? 5 per second. It's pretty late, so my maths is pretty rusty, but I'm pretty sure it's about just under 5 per second. So this build here is doing 5 per second, and that 5 per second has kept us going for a very, very long time. In saying that, we're not actually using that much more than 5 per second now, but it does mean that we're bringing in a whole belt of critical photons, which we're then cracking into their 2 core components and turning them into antimatter fuel rods. On top of that, we have another build over here, which is also doing a whole belt of critical photons, which we're then putting back in the tower and directly as antimatter, which we're using for science. And the rest of the hydrogen is getting burnt off, as I said, with these giant hydrogen power plants, because we needed more power. And although making a Dyson Sphere is a good way to get power, you also need the Dyson Sphere running to get critical photons. So we went with hydrogen, because hydrogen is one of the most abundant resources in the galaxy, and with a gas giant inside your home system, you are never going to be able to run out of, well, not without a lot of effort and a lot of trying. You're not going to be able to pull enough gas out of your gas giant early enough that you're going to run into a situation where you just don't have enough hydrogen to keep things running. So we had a hydrogen power plant to burn off hydrogen here. On top of that, a second one on the North Pole, which again I would love to finish building, except there are ore patches in the way that we still haven't mined out entirely. And the South Pole, actually we should fly to the South Pole. The South Pole was doing, well, rockets. We did build a small rocket build on our home system, and just got a couple of rockets up and running on this particular planet. Nothing too spectacular, but just a few rocket silos, because realistically, you don't need many silos. The idea of building a couple of silos is they just run in the background slowly over time and launch the 10,000 required to get our intergalactic logo. Helps if I flip it up the right way. There we go. Get our intergalactic logo up and running. All right, intergalactic advertising campaign. That's probably more accurate. So this got our home system up and running. From our home system, we had to go out. We had to do a few things. We had to go out to Woodbridge. Woodbridge was one of our first stops. Mainly to get some of the rare resources. We definitely needed oil from this planet, along with spiniform. Spiniform was another one we got from the Woodbridge system. We also went to Snake Games. I think Snake Games was maybe one of our first outposts for organic crystal. Organic crystal is a game changer. It makes such a difference. Fire ice doesn't hurt. Crude oil as well. And the other one was, I want to go with Lanky. Not Lanky. Lanky again, just an outpost planet, just grabbing resources. Coffee Capone? No. I don't remember. We had to go a significant distance, because the other rare resource you want to get, calf. There we go, calf. The other rare resource you want to get as early in the game as you can is sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid makes such a difference. Volcanic ash planet. There we go. We came over here to CAF number 1. We put down some of those water pumps and we started pumping out some sulfuric acid because it just makes such a difference. The other planets, I can't even remember, obviously. Gas giant. We went and grabbed a gas giant because you might as well. A little bit of extra deuterium never hurts, along with that infinite hydrogen. And that was really our starting system. Nothing too heavy, nothing too crazy. That was until we made the jump over to... yeah, flip it up the right way so I can actually get some orientation. We went over to the Magna System. Now, the Magna System was our first obvious choice because it has a bright blue Type O star. Type O stars have a very, very high luminosity at over 2. And the biggest thing about a high luminosity star is if we go back and check your home star generally has a luminosity of around about 1, which means any solar sail or any rocket that you launch on a Type O star produces twice as much power. Or in my case, 2.5 times as much power. So our very first jump was over to the Magna System where we could start to scale up our production. So when we got to the Magna System, there was a couple of things I wanted to set up. Obviously, being a Type O star, one of the very, very first things we wanted to do was start launching rockets, okay? We'd already made rockets back in our home system. We got rockets up and running. They were doing an okay job. We were making some of them. But obviously, a rocket sitting in a silo doesn't produce any power. So we came out to this system, and the very first place we went was to the very edge of this system, because it being as far away as possible, I figured it would be a good spot to start making some rocket silos. So we came to this system, and I think they're just over the horizon. We put down a rocket silo or 2. We just got a few rockets up and running. We didn't have quite this many to start with, but you know, we got 1 or 2 up and running, and they have successfully launched over 700,000 rockets, and we are continuing to build our current sphere, which is already up to 160 gigawatts of just rockets. There is not a single sail inside this Dyson structure, because I have found personally that once you start building Dyson Spheres with sails and they're filled in, the game performance starts to tank. It seems it's mainly due to the graphics. If the game doesn't render the Dyson Sphere with the sails, it tends to be a lot better. So we came out here, we started putting down some rockets. Okay, rockets were great. We could start firing off some rockets. We already had antimatter up and running back in our home system, so we can start playing with antimatter stars, get some significant power up and running, and then we came out to this planet and we started doing a couple of productions. Okay, first thing we started looking at was, well, actually, we started doing everything in this system. So first thing we did was we did a whole lot of outposting. Okay, might as well have the raw resources nice and local and be able to grab them in. As you can see, the only thing that we're really actually, no, I take that back. We have significant demand on both items, but we also just noticed that this is still running on green belt. It's that old. It was before we had industrial quantities of blue belt up and running. Same time I wanted to start, as we were now producing rockets, firing them into the air, not at a terribly fast rate, but it was at least a working rate. I want to start working through our sciences. So on this particular planet, because we have the rocket silos here, we started making the last 2 science packs. We'd already done the early ones, but we'll jump back to that planet in a second. And science exits there. I'm at the wrong end of the planet. Come on, Icarus. We need to go back to this pole. Alright, so we started off at the top of the planet, and again, with my black box designs, this was a very, very early interpretation of the design. So we started making yellow science. Yellow science requires, if you remember, titanium crystals. So we started producing titanium crystals by, again, importing the titanium, importing the organic crystals, making titanium crystals, putting them on a belt, and then running them into our science build. At the same time, it also required diamonds. This particular planet has kimberlite ore, so we whacked down the smelters, brought the kimberlite ore into one tower, and then started producing the diamonds, and again whacked them into yellow science. And as you can see, we have a significant amount of labs up and running, because this build actually does 30 science per second. whacked into it all into a tower, and eventually they're getting exported and sent off to one of our two science planets. And that was yellow science. Yellow science was fairly easy. Of course, after yellow science, you get to purple science. Purple science, slightly different nightmare. Actually, I think purple science is on a whole different planet. It's that much of a nightmare. On this planet, we did start working our way towards green science, which of course required engines to make green engines, to make particle containers. I'm remembering all the names of all the recipes as we go, along with a whole bunch of graphene, which of course produces a whole lot of hydrogen, which again we dump into the local tower and then we dispose of. Again, this is all belt fed, so from our original engine builds, let's find the belts, follow the belts. No, engines come this way. And then when they get to the end of the build, they feed directly into green engines down that way, and green engines feed directly out into particle containers, which feed out this way and head all the way around the map to head into strange matter. Strange matter also requires a lot of deuterium. You remember that hydrogen we spoke about earlier? We made a few hydrogen to deuterium conversion plants and got them up and running. In fact, there is 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, 4 here, 5 here. These are all earlier designs before we'd started doing it with towers. 6, 7. There's a few of them potted around the planet, yeah. And that gave us the strange matter, which then, of course, strange matter gets turned into graviton lenses, and then that gives us half a green science cube. The other half is, of course, quantum chips, which require processors and plane filters, yes, which requires titanium glass and titanium glass to be fed into a giant plane filter build, along with those cashmere crystals, which also eat up a whole bunch of hydrogen, along with titanium crystals, and of course some graphene again from fire ice. So again, continue with the black box build theme. This was all belt fed one item into the next item, and again built rather than a small compact build that was not aimed at 30 science per second, but something more reasonable, around about 15 for most of the science packs. These were built in long snaking lines, which then fed one line into the second line, into the third line, so on and so forth, to then finally produce our science packs to again shove them in the tower, so then they're available to go and, make science as fast as possible. So this was our Magna number 5. Now, Magna number 5 served us well. As you can see, also launches a ridiculous amount of rockets. But we also had the Magna 4 system. Now, Magna 4 system, being a Gobi, didn't do a whole lot. So here we are on Magna 4, which technically does do something. It has the poorest, saddest blue science and red science builds ever. They're literally, that's it. It's the only thing on the planet. I didn't even bother harvesting half the resources. We literally came here. I had no rare resources. It was pretty boring. So we built 2 science packs. And same story, black box build. Bring in magnets, iron and copper. We go and make our electronic circuit. Is that what it's called? Circuit board. Oh, so close. And our magnetic coils, which then produces blue science. And over here, we're importing obviously hydrogen and the energetic graphene to then make red science. Most boring builds ever. Most boring planet ever, but sort of required to do all those science packs. Yeah, in fact, why is your charging rate so low? We should probably up that. And up that. Okay. There you go. Weird things you find out when you go around and visit all the planets a 4th time, 5th time. Okay, so that was Magna number 4. From there we went to Magna number 3 from memory to do purple science. No, turns out on Magna number 3, it was Hurricane Stone Forest, so the only thing we managed to do was foundation the whole planet for all that lovely soil pile. On Magna number 2 is where we set up purple science. Now, purple science was that first step where things are starting to get complicated. Just a little bit complicated. So again, purple science, sort of following the same rules as the other black box builds. We have circuit boards, which of course feed into processors with microcrystalline components. which then feed into more processors. Yeah, another row of processors, which then come down here and feed Purple Science, because Purple Science is one of the ones with a weird recipe. It needs 2 processors for 1 particle broadband, whereas most of the other ones need like 1 and 1. In fact, you know, Blue Science 1 and 1, Red Science 2 and 2. That sort of makes sense. Green Science 1 and 1, Purple 2 and 1, and then of course 1 and 1 for green, but you get 2 packs, which just confuses things once again. Anyway, Purple Science need a whole bunch of processors. We produced all of those on site. Also needed particle broadband. As you can see, we have a lovely particle broadband here, which also needed crystal silicon. Crystal silicon you can conveniently make from fractal silicon. This planet happened to have fractal silicon. So we're actually mining the local fractal silicon, bring it down, converting it into our silicon crystals, to then turn it into the particle broadband, along with a whole bunch of nanotubes from the spiniform stagmite crystal, which in hindsight, now we've actually gone through and redone all the black box builds, I always chose not to use the stagmite, because as far as rare resources go, it's actually one of the ones that's harder to find. So I just went with using twice as many chemical plants using fire ice, because fire ice is actually dead easy. On top of that, we needed plastic. Plastic, of course, needed oil. So we had to make a oil build right here, which is just importing a ridiculous amount of oil, taking all the hydrogen, burning it off in... I can't remember what burns off the hydrogen. Actually, nothing burns off the hydrogen. No, it's available for other places to go use. So it's get fed into the tower via this splitter, which is prioritized to go into the tower first. And for whatever reason, if the tower ends up full, it comes up this lovely belt. Let's just use the M button, and gets fed into these old hydrogen plants via this tower to, well, burn off the hydrogen for power, because why not? So yes, this was our Purple Science build. Our Purple Science build. Again, doing 30 science per second. Again, when we rebuilt this as our more refined black box blueprints, chose to go for 15 per second, because 30 is, well... It's like a third of a planet. A third of a planet. It's a little bit ridiculous. Also, once we had blueprints, which obviously came well after this was built, it's much easier to slide builds up and down a planet and sort of get them a little bit more aligned. Anyway, this was our Magna number 2 planet, which leads us to Magna number 1. Now, Magna number 1 was a very, very special planet, intentionally saved because it was a sacred planet, because it had one thing the other planets didn't have. Now, it wasn't entirely locked, because I know a lot of people love their entirely locked planets. Wasn't entirely locked, didn't have horizontal rotation, didn't have anything special like that. The one special thing that this planet had is, as you can see, it's inside the Dyson Sphere. Because it's inside the Dyson Sphere, it has the most critical thing in the world, infinite critical photons. Well, providing you have enough power in your Dyson Sphere and enough ray receivers to pull down the critical photons, you can put critical photons here in the... Well, the sun's rising. Let's go to the dark side of the planet. That's pretty dark. It has 100% continuous receiving, because it can either see the sun at all times, or it can see the Dyson Sphere at all times, which means this little planet, local planet, is producing 6,000 critical photons per minute. Yeah, that's a ridiculous amount. And we started off with just long lines of critical photon machines. There is nothing special. They're not being fed graviton lenses or anything like that. In fact, that whole belt is backed up. It can't get out fast enough to get fed into that machine. That's sad and tragic, and totally not worth fixing because the tower is full. Yes, we had lots and lots of these just plopped down everywhere, just in long straight lines, long belts feeding them. Generally sticking to a batch of 300 at a time before I bring a belt out. Well, we've got a belt coming out sideways and getting fed down here. And either the belt's not connected or it's backed up. It's backed up because the tower's full. Yeah. we're making an insane amount of critical photons here. On top of that, critical photons obviously don't need any power. So our power usage on this planet is actually very, very low. It's only used for the couple of towers we actually have hanging around that are doing, well, resource gathering. And now that we have ridiculous research, it also means, well, obviously that many is required. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? 7? Are you actually outputting? 32, 31, 30? Yeah, okay. So 7 of my water pumps now fill a whole belt because they now do 240 per minute. Because originally they started off at like 30 per minute. And through a lot of research, they're now doing 240 per minute. Yeah. We also have another critical photon build. This is the one that actually made a blueprint available for you guys. It is, where are we? Published builds. So we have a black box ray receiver for power and a black box critical photon. This build actually is set up for photon generation, so it dumps them into this lovely tower. By the same token, I did find, and if we bring up this is the power version, which in theory you could line it up. That'll be the difficult part. Is that lined up? No, that looks like it's 90 degrees, 180 degrees offset. There we go, that's lined up. Okay, so in theory, if the game would let you, you could place it over the top and it would swap everything from critical photon generation to power generation. Fortunately, the game doesn't allow that, but if you remove everything except the ray receivers, then click, it allows it. And when it allows it, they all swap over to power generation, which gives you an insane power boost. It also dumps stuff on the floor everywhere because, you know, they kick out all their graviton lenses, they kick out all their critical photons, they fill up your inventory with so much junk. Can I move that out of the way, please? Just throw those back in there. More. More. And throw those back in there, not when it matters, because we're about to sort the whole thing back. But yes, I found out that you could very, very easily, by coming in here, grabbing the blueprint in your hand, and then just removing everything except the ray receivers and lighting everything up, and click, it then swaps from one type to the other. Which is awesome, by the way. Just insanely awesome. Apart from, yeah, all the crap that ends up in your inventory. But that seems like something that, you know, you can sort out in your own time. Remote command. There we go. Okay, so that was another thing. So this really finished off our Magna System. Once Magna System was up and running, we were producing a hard 30 science per second. That's where things sort of progressed. You know, I had to do a whole lot of outposting. So we have the Micho system, the Kuchen salad, which is cake salad, after translated, cake salad system, the Moonlight system, the saber-tooth casual system for, you know, more organic crystals, more hydrogen, more deuterium, more fractal silicon, crude oil, Grasmus, which had spiniform, along with sulfuric acid, organic crystal. There were a lot of resources that I needed to go and gather, which meant a lot of outposting, a lot of going and visiting other systems. Maybe not so much for actually setting up production, but as you can see with the Micho system, we've heavily invested into this planet and obviously done a significant amount of mining on that planet. Some planets I was very careful with, and we went and mined everything. Other planets, not quite so much. That's a gas giant. That's a rocky salt lake. Okay, no idea. But you can see, like, in the Micho system, every one of the planets has a certain amount of ships coming and visiting. Same goes with Kitchen Salad. Kitchen Salad also has, you know, 2 planets, a lava and a ashen planet. Both are heavily active. A Scarlet Ice Lake, which I don't think I bothered. I don't think I did anything with this. But again, a gas giant. We did have to do a lot of hunting for gas giants as our production went up. just because of the sheer amount of hydrogen we were trying to convert to deuterium. Along with again moonlight, you can see that we just have an insane amount of ships coming back and forth. Again, this one was actually chosen as well because one of these, the organic. So we have an organic crystal planet here, which has the spinner form, which, like I said, I regretted using at one stage, and there is also. It must be Grasimus. No. There was also 2 planets I desperately had to grab for spinner form quite early in the game because we started using it as a rare material, which I thoroughly hated myself for. Woodbridge has a water world. There we go. Waterworld, which we started using the spinner form, which, like I said, in hindsight, probably would never do again. Especially now we have the black box blueprints, probably would never do again. But this is where we got up to with this system, okay? And this is also where we're going to get up to with this this video and this episode. Next video, we're going to be talking about our black box planet, which is where we have all our blueprints. We're going to go through a lot of those. At the same time, I'm going to finally share properly. It's not actually in the save; it's a whole different save. My construction hub. Anyway, that's where I'm going to leave this episode. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Do hope you've enjoyed. And can you do me a favor? Can you say hi to your mum for me? Alright, that's it. Right, bye.